affluence, abundance, and prosperity. And first of all, I want you to know you are already rich in every aspect of the word. You are affluent and you are abundant. And hopefully I'll be able to inspire you with some information. Some information you already know by heart, some of the information you know in your mind, and some information I trust will be fresh. So, affluence is in proportion to effluence, and in affluence is plenty of supply, and effluence is flowing out. So we want to be effluent first, and that leads to affluency. And no offense intended, but in your song you said, the more I have, the more I give. And those were part of your words, and they were beautiful. The truth is, the more, it's the reverse of that. The more I give, the more I have. And the more of giving precedes the more of having. So it's the more you give, the more you have. The more you give, the more you get. And the more overflow, which is the flowing out, then the more inflow. So in order to increase the inflow, we have to increase the outflow, and we have to increase the outflow first. And not say, well, when I have enough, I'll be able to be more generous. No, we need to be generous now, and then the inflow will come, and we'll have more than enough. So overflow is generosity, and it's developed with, and these are things that we are naturally good at. It is developed with affection, love, and goodwill. Affection, love, and goodwill. And generosity has a shadow. And it isn't overshadowed, it just has a shadow that follows it everywhere. And generosity, wherever generosity goes, wherever there's affection, love, and goodwill, the shadow follows. And the shadow of generosity is abundance and affluence. So wherever there is love, goodwill, and affection, that is followed up with abundance and affluence. So we ground ourselves in love by knowing that we are affluent, loving, and have goodwill. So we ground ourselves in love. And let's take a look at how we ground ourselves, and that is with realization. We come to the realization that we love, that we are affluent, that we endeavor to do good will wherever we go, and that we are affectionate. Now, these are powerful terms and ideas to demonstrate. As we look at realization, now see, we want to have the realization, come to the realization that we are already abundant, that we are already prosperous, that we have arrived in a luxury and prosperity. When we have that realization, then it starts to demonstrate for us. And this realization is like a light that illumines our awareness and our path. And it is our light at the end of the tunnel. So I always thought this was cute, that the light at the end of the tunnel is, some people say it's a train coming at you. Others say the light at the end of the tunnel is where the switch is. You turn on the light. But I'm telling you that the light at the end of the tunnel is enlightenment. And the light at the end of the tunnel is turned on with the realization. So rather than wander around in darkness and lack, both of those are dirty words, we want to have the realization that God's light shines within us, and we can be aware of that light and nurture it, and with love and goodwill and affection, we can help it grow and glow lighter and be enlightened from within, because we have this light within us that we have the realization and the recognition of. And so we want to realize, and what helps this realization come about is what we think about, we bring about. What we speak about and affirm starts to manifest in our lives. So we want to say, I am abundant, not when or if, but I am now abundant, and I am generous, and I am affluent. And now I'm telling you this story, not because I'm a little old man who loves to tell old stories about the past, but I think this might have some relativity. When I was driving my two infant sons. They were young. Trevor was in first grade and Austin was in kindergarten. Now this was some 40 years ago. Trevor had a birthday package on his lap that we had wrapped, and it was a truck. And he said, I said, isn't it exciting to get to go to the birthday party? And he said, I'm not excited. And I said, oh, but there'll be cake and fun, and your friends will be there, and you'll give your present, and he'll have, the little boy, that's the birthday boy, will have presents. And Trevor said, I don't want to give him my present. I want to keep this truck. And I said, well, that's not the way to go to a birthday party. The birthday party is an opportunity to give and help somebody celebrate, to be 1 year older. And that's called being generous, and you want to be generous, because when you're generous, people give you things. But if you're a little boy that says, oh, I don't want to give anybody this present, then people don't want to give you presents. And that doesn't help you have the things you want in your life, because you're not being generous. And Austin, who was in the back seat, no seat belts, or I mean seat belts, but no child care seats. Austin said, I was generous once. I always thought that was cute. And again, I'm not telling you because I'm some little old man who repeats old stories about the past, because that's all I can remember. But I'm telling you that because we want to say, I'm generous, I'm abundant, and I'm affluent. And those are attitudes to have. That's the self-talk you need to be going over all the time. Because if what you speak about, you bring about, and that's what you speak about all the time, and you have a passion for it, and you're driven at it, then that's what you will manifest, because that's all you talk about. So, then, let me tell you about this. Should is a dirty word, and you should not should on yourself. So, here's what should does. It cancels realization. And instead of saying, I should be abundant, now these words I'm telling myself this, I'm talking dirty here, but this doesn't apply to me, just for illustration purposes. If you say, I should be abundant, I should be generous, I should be affluent, you're canceling out the realization part of you that is realizing these qualities. And realization is a grace, and we can have a graceful life with this affection, love, and goodwill. And this realization is enlightenment. So in order to be, and we all want to do this, we want to be more enlightened and more above the noise of the world into the harmony of the universe and what's possible. And we become enlightened as we notice that we can move out of the darkness, that we have a realization of who we really are, and that is that we are God's beloved child, and we are the heirs to the kingdom. The will has already been written and read, and we're in it. And that is, we inherit all that God has for us. So, wealth is like happiness. We all know about the pursuit of happiness. It's a part of our Constitution, and we have the right to pursue happiness. But here's something that you may not know. Happiness cannot be pursued. You can't pursue happiness. It has to be realized. So we're talking about having a realization. And New Thought is about realizing our source and where we're from, whose kid we are, and what we have inherited, and how we have at our disposal every possibility, and we can do anything that we put our heart and mind to. So we're talking about realizing, having a realization. So how do you realize an abundance of wealth? I have several how-tos, but this is one of them. First of all, you know that if you are abundant, you have everything you need. You already have everything you need. Now, you can put this to work by when you leap in your car to go someplace, you can say in advance, I am abundant. There is a parking space where I need to go that's waiting for me. And this is it. Church was really busy this morning. We must be on Church Row here, which is great. And we had to really look for a parking space. But when you get in your car to go, you want to affirm on your way that everything is safe around me. One popular prayer is the lights are green, the highway's the Lord's, and the lights are all green. And but you want to say there's a place that's perfect for me. And then when you get there, you'll find that your declaration, your affirmation, your love, your gratitude, your interest in the goodwill of everybody, everything working together for good, will have your place waiting for you, and it will be miraculous. So one time, I was going to Parkway Plaza. It was Christmas time, and I needed to go in for something. It wasn't Christmas related, but I had to leap in there and out. And of course, my perfect parking place was not by the front door. It was not in the middle of the lot. It was back on the edge where there were only a few places left. I was still thankful that I had a parking place. I would have preferred that it be closer to the door because of the time limit that I had, but I was grateful. And on my way in to the shopping center, I met a couple. And I hadn't seen them in a while, and they were from church. And they said, oh, Reverend Hammons, we are so sorry we haven't seen you, but this and this and this have been going on. And they were major things that were really life-interrupting. And these people were dear and sweet, and I liked them, they liked me, and they were hurting, and they were sorry. They just hadn't made it into church because of what was going on. And they said, but seeing you, we will come to church this Sunday. Well, I hear that all the time, and I always go, yeah, right. And but the Sunday they were there, and then they said, seeing you, reminded us of our church and our church family, and so that's why we came. So, we're here, and we're going to use these spiritual principles to help us sort out, understand, love, be thankful for, and find the good in all these challenges we're having. And so things really did brighten up for them not because they came to church, but because they applied themselves and the things they heard while they were in church. Most of the things I never said, but they heard them while I was going on, which is the agreement that God and I have. And so I did have my perfect parking space. I was meant to be there as far as I'm concerned, and that I could be twisting all that around to my benefit. But since it's for my benefit, twist I shall, because it supports and promotes the things I believe in. So you can manipulate it all you want, as long as it brings about the love, the abundance, the goodwill, and the affection for what this is all about. So to realize abundance and abundance of wealth, we need to know that we are abundant, that we have everything we need. And if we don't have it and we need it, it will appear. Then, affluence is spiritual. It is knowing, realizing, and enlightenment. So affluence, to be rich, is a spiritual quality. So maybe you heard, and when I grew up in Dallas, Texas, my grandmother lived in a mansion in the richest part of town. And that was because she married well, and she was very happy, and she was a Christian Scientist. And so she demonstrated this. And on our way from our normal all-American neighborhood to her house, aunts and uncles would drop us off or pick us up, and my parents would drive back and forth. And I would hear people talk about this rich, it's called Highland Park, the richest part of Dallas. And this is like Beverly Hills. There's beautiful landscaped homes and gardens and lawns and entryways and chandeliers and sparkling windows and astonishing beauty. And my parents would say things like, or aunts and uncles would say things like, these people live here because they're rich, but they're rich because, and they have all this money because they got it in ways that are not right. And so I heard that, and I thought, well, that's how rich people are rich, but that's not the truth. Being abundant and rich is knowing where your supply is coming from, and affluence is a consciousness of God's unlimited flow of good. The flow of good is continually flowing, and to have your share of it, you want to be loving, interested in the goodwill of everyone concerned, and affectionate. And affluence is knowing that money cannot buy affluence. And affluence is understanding where the good comes from and how it comes. It comes through enlightenment of a person who is receptive and who is aware and who is open and available to the good. And abundance is realized. And so we instead of saying I want more money, we want to say I want more abundance. I want more a realization that my abundance already exists. So here's some more how-tos. Don't should. Instead say, I am generous, I am affluent, I am loving, instead of the other word. We want to eliminate that. And then we want to realize, believe, and know. Now you have beliefs, and they've brought you this far, but in order for you to go farther, those beliefs have to be expanded. And so you examine your beliefs, and you can say, how can I add on to this? I'm interested in the television shows about makeovers and those house things where they buy an old house and fix it up. And I see magazines that have floor plans and how the kitchen spills into the dining room, into the living room, and it's all different than houses used to be built, and the dining room was down the hall, and the kitchen and the family room and all that. And that is expanding, and it's making living spaces freer and more beautiful and more accessible and easier to live in and maintain and decorate and all. So things change in our world, and things are changing rapidly in the world that we have known. One of the interesting things is church changes. And when I grew up, when you grew up, we went to church every Sunday. Everybody went to church every Sunday, most everybody, except the guy on the cover of the Norman Rockwell cover that's sitting there with the newspaper when the family's leaving. But most everybody went to church, and things have changed now so that, and change is good, and we have to love, adore, welcome, find the good in these changes. And so instead of everybody being here with us, they have options now that when we grew up, they didn't have. There are football games on, and there weren't any national teams and AFL and all that stuff going on at the time. And shopping centers were closed because it was Sunday morning. And that has all changed. And that's good, because the people that work in the shopping centers, they're increasing their abundance by having a job. And the people that are in the shopping centers right right this moment, instead of being here with us in church, are spending their money and getting the things they need and getting ready to go work all this next week and really apply themselves and have all their needs met. So things are different. And so one of the things that I'm really in support of and interested in watching how this is going to unfold is how there are all these places for people to go on Sunday morning, and we have our place. And our place is church, because we like that. We go to church. We do church. And in that, we have fellowship with each other that cannot be experienced too many other places. And we have refreshments, and we have conversation and support, and we have the love and the camaraderie of knowing each other and knowing when something's off or when something happens or when our church moves and we find ourselves in a new place. This all stimulates great growth and consciousness that brings enlightenment and then eventually brings prosperity and awareness and an expanded life. And this is what we get for being a part of this church family. And it's important to know that we need to come here and be here as often as possible and give our gifts and support each other and the minister and the teachings and volunteer, bring refreshments when it's our turn, do whatever we can to be of support to this, because this is our spiritual home. And by doing that, that helps us believe, and it helps us know, and it helps us demonstrate, and it helps us watch others whom we know do their demonstrating, their believing, and their knowing, which then stimulates us. So it's a very homogeneous pool of workers and believers. Also on how to is to cultivate an appreciation for spiritual good and to understand spiritual good. And spiritual good, I'm coming to that, is God's abundance and overflow for each of us. And so we can develop an abiding interest in spiritual good. And believe me, if you don't have the interest, then you're not, the interest is the gas in the tank that keeps you going. So we have to have interest. And there are things and times when I'll have to do something, or there'll be something that I have to participate in, and I have to say to myself, what am I interested in this? Am I interested in going along because there are other people here who care about it and I care about them, so I'm going to go along, although it doesn't satisfy me that much? Or could I be interested in what I could learn that I don't know from this? And so interest is a key to abundance. And to be innocent is also an important quality. Not naive, but innocent. And we all have some degree of innocence left, and we can go back in time and remember when we were purely innocent of things. But an example from the Bible of innocence and not naivety is Daniel. And Daniel in the lion's den is one of my favorite stories. This is Old Testament. Daniel was told that he had to honor the king as God. And Daniel said, God has found innocence in me, and God is my source, not the king. So the king was irritated. So he put Daniel in the lion's den, and he put him in there overnight. And the deal was, when morning comes and we open the gates, and if Daniel steps out, then we'll take a look at his God. And so in the morning, sure enough, Daniel stepped out, and this changed everything for the king, his court, and all the believers. And some enlightenment came to the king because of Daniel's innocence. Well, the thing I like about this story, and this is my take on it. I've read a lot about Daniel, and nobody else has said this but me, but I think Daniel was enlightened. I think he was bright, and his countenance was light. He was enlightened. I think he was the light. And when they put him in the dark with the lions, I think his light shone. Now I'm telling you this so that your light can shine. And I think that lions are nocturnal. And so they are awake when it's dark. They go to sleep when it's daylight. And I think Daniel, now I could just be making this up and I could be wrong, although that doesn't happen very often, but I could be wrong. But it serves me, and it's part of my belief, my love, my affection, my goodwill thing. So I'm going to keep this in my story and I'm sticking with it. Daniel was so light that the lions couldn't go to sleep and they didn't have an appetite for him. And so his belief, his God, his awareness, his consciousness, his enlightenment saved him, and he had abundance because he got to live instead of being eaten up. So Daniel said, God has found innocence in me, so that being innocent is a little bit of this idea of being able to accept and create abundance. And the beasts, the lions, these beastly mentalities had no power to hurt him. And we live in a world of beastly mentalities. If you don't believe me, just turn on the news. But those beastly mentalities have no power to hurt you if you are stronger than they are, and you are brighter and more illumined than they are. And what gives you your brightness and your illumination is your belief in who you are and your connection to Spirit and to God. And that we reinforce that by coming to church. Okay, then Jesus had a concise formula for demonstration. And he was at giving the Sermon on the Mount. And there were thousands of people there. And he shared information with them. And the way, as I understand it, the way that the people in the very back heard was the people that heard the message in front would turn around and share the next bunch of people behind them. And then they would share it and it would just tumble down the hill. And I think because Jesus' words were concise and full of love and goodwill and affection, I think they got it wasn't like the game of gossip. The message was shared. And then someone came up and said, Jesus, it's time for lunch. And he said, yes. And they said, so everybody's hungry, what are we going to do? And Jesus said, well, what have we got? And they said, you're not going to believe this. We've got 2 fish and some loaves of bread. It's unleavened, and the fish were dried and crunchy. And so he goes, okay, well, bring them forth. And so then what Jesus did was he looked to heaven. He physically looked to heaven. Well, our heaven is a state of mind in the kingdom within, so we want to look within. And he fixed his attention on spiritual substance and the source of abundance. He made contact. Then he thought about abundance. His thoughts were filled with abundance. And then he thanked God for the supply at hand. And then he blessed the loaves and the fishes, and he used what he had wisely, and he made room for more. And hoarding shuts off the possibilities. So being generous opens up the possibilities. And as he shared the fishes and the loaves with the people right there, just like the news traveled down the hill, everybody had a snack with them. But they weren't, their mamas had told them at home, don't eat in front of others that don't have something, it's not polite. So, but everybody was waiting, and when this came about, they all took their snacks, their own little crunches of bread and their crispy little fish, and they shared them with each other so that there was more than enough left over, and they took the abundance of what was left over and shared it with the people in town that didn't have anything and that couldn't have come to the mount to hear the sermon. So this was a great demonstration, and it came by looking to heaven, thinking about abundance, being grateful to God for the supply at hand, and then using what you have and blessing it, and then giving, and then receiving. So gratitude opens our consciousness to receive more. So we want, again, here we're emphasizing this law of gratitude, being thankful, and thankful in advance. Now, the only lack that you have is the lack of realization. And this lack of realization that God's limitless substance is available to all his children. And I saw this on a t-shirt recently, and the person that ran past me said, "You are your own limit." And I thought, wait a minute, what did that say? But you are, the only thing that's limiting you is you. You are your own limit. And what we want to do is we want to blame the world or timing or age or whatever. But you are the only limit. And so when you find a limit, you want to say, what am I doing to myself? What am I saying and believing about this? This is not true. And if I can break through this limit, I'll be on the other side of it, where all the unlimited is waiting for me. I owe it to myself to take care of myself to do this. So instead of driving down the freeway with the radio on, you can drive down the freeway saying, where are my limits? Let me add them. And then look at how you're thinking about them, maybe research where they came from, and then say, why do I have to have this? This isn't how I want my life to be. So then it's important to know that divine substance is at hand. And as we tune in with Spirit, we know just what to do. Once we examine our limits, tune into Spirit, and know that divine substance is at hand. Answers, solutions, the growth is at hand, and what we need to do, the instructions, are at hand too. So we believe, then we work on believing that plenty exists in the most unexpected places. So, this is another Bible story. Jesus is going into town, and the officials from the temple approach him, and they say, we need a tax for all of you guys and you, Jesus, to give to the temple. And this was a way that the temple maintained itself and paid for itself and its priests and its expenses. And so they said, you have to give us so much money each. And this is a temple tax. And if you don't do this, you can't come in to town. So Jesus said, and Peter said, Jesus, we don't have this shilling that they need. What shall we do? And Jesus said, go thou to the sea and cast a hook and take up the fish that first cometh up, and when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a shackle. That take and give unto these for me and thee. And this is in Matthew the 17th chapter, the 27th verse. So Jesus knew that what he had need of would be provided, and sure enough, there it was. And Jesus also had a standard statement that he used often, which was, not as I will, but as thou wilt. And that's Matthew the 26th chapter, the 59th verse. And so we want to say, I have a vision for my prosperity, and I know that if I'm loving, generous, and interested in the good of everyone, having goodwill, that my good will come to me. This is in my belief system, this is in my realization, this is in my awareness, and this makes me an enlightened individual. And because all this is going on, there's no room to should, and there's no room for lack, because all this is on a level above all of that. We've lifted ourselves up. So, when I was in high school, some 50 years ago, having your class ring was really a big deal. And I had a class ring, and it cost $27. And we ordered them at school, and they came with our initials inside, and the year of 61, and Thomas Jefferson High School. And having my class ring was really big because I was the first person in my family to ever graduate from high school. And so this was really a big deal. And after I had my ring a couple of weeks, we went to Lake Dallas to spend the weekend with my grandmother, who fried chicken and had everybody over. And we went to the lake on Friday night, and the daylight was lingering, and it was fun, and there was mud to play in, and the water to swim in, and the family, and watermelon and everything. And then we went home and ate, and then the next day I mowed my grandmother's lawn, which was a big area, as big as this room. And Saturday night I realized my ring was gone. And so I prayed real hard. Oh God, this cannot be. And so I looked everywhere, looked all over the house, looked and raked the yard, every square inch of it, no ring. And it was gone, and there was no finding it. And my parents were going to kill me because I made the money to buy the ring, and I followed their instructions, which was get it a size larger because you're going to grow into it. And we thought, since graduating from high school was such a big deal in our family, that I would wear my high school ring forever. I'm even into my 70s. And so I did what they said. And I cried and I prayed. And so my grandmother had great sympathy for me, and she said, we'll go down to the ordering place. We'll pay them the $27 and we'll get you another one, a size smaller. So we did that, and then for 2 weeks I had my hand in my pocket so my parents wouldn't find out that I had been irresponsible. And so then they came, and when it came I had it, everything was just fine. And then I graduated, and that was a lovely experience. And then I joined the Navy, and I was in the Navy for a couple of years when I received a letter and a small box from my father. And the letter said, open the box first. I opened the box first, and there was my ring that I had lost. And my father said, this is what happened. Some people went fishing in Lake Dallas. They caught a fish. It had your ring inside. They called Thomas Jefferson. This is a true story, I swear to God. They called Thomas Jefferson High School and asked who in 1961 had the initials inside the ring, GAH. And it was me. And then they found my father. There weren't that many Hammons in the phone book. Not because there weren't a lot of Hammons in Dallas, just a lot of them didn't have phones. And so they found my father, and they brought him the ring, and he sent it to me, and then he said, I never knew you lost your ring in Lake Dallas. Why didn't you tell us? And I thought, you'd have killed me, that's why. That's real simple. But, so there's a lot of stories going on here. That which is lost is always found, or replaced by something better. You can't get away with anything without the truth being somehow, some way revealed, either through you, in you, or from outside. And so when I heard this story about the shackle in the fish mouth, I could really identify that's a possibility right there. So in Jesus telling this story, he was talking about being in tune with Spirit and knowing just what to do, and knowing that what you do will lead to what you need. So then, what we think about, we bring about. And what we think about, we attract. So if you're worried about this or that, then you need to realize, I'm giving this attention, and this attention is not going to serve me. Then, what we think about gives energy to what we think about, and that helps it manifest. And our words work in the same way. So to create prosperity with our vocabulary, so we want to hear some more how-tos. We want to create prosperity by speaking about it. I knew a lovely couple that came to the church in San Diego where I grew up. He invented a machine that sharpened saw blades. Now, I always thought a saw blade, but these are round saw blades. And if you've ever looked at them, they have teeth that go in every direction. And the machine had to sharpen all these teeth in a round sharpening thing. And so Mr. Daggett and his wife's name was May, and they were rich and they were generous. And May said, and I learned this from her right off the bat, she said, we are always so grateful. We are so thankful about this. And she almost overused these words. We're so glad, we're so grateful, we all appreciate so much. And she used that, it was her vocabulary in every sentence. And they had an abundance of everything. And he made these machines himself, and then he put one in every major city. And they were very popular because construction needed to sharpen their saws, the people doing construction. And so they would bring the saw, and then the man that ran the machine would sharpen the saw blades and then make some money off of his labor and give Mr. Daggett a percentage. And that percentage made Mr. Daggett and May very wealthy. When Mr. Daggett died, he gave, and no one knew this was going to happen, he gave each individual machine to each individual store that had leased it from him, and now they owned it, and all the profit was theirs. And that was, he didn't have any heirs. He was very generous to a number of organizations in the zoo and the Unity Church in San Diego. But that was the source of his income, but really the source of his income was his thinking and May's vocabulary. So she had the prosperity in her every word. Then we need to give thanks and praise the good. When something happens, we need to find the good in it. When something bad happens, we need to find the good in it. I'm very sorry about the panhandle of Florida, and I'm sure you are too. It's very sad, the loss of life, the little pets, and the destruction. But what will come that I'm grateful for in advance is the jobs, the money, the spending, the new homes, the new beds, the new furniture, the new refrigerators, the new cars, everything good that will come, and everyone will have a freshness and an increase, and there'll be an abundance there that will smooth away the old and replace it and replenish it with the fresh and the new. And I can see that happening, and that's my focus, not on things that pull us down, but on things that lift us up. So I give thanks and praise the good in everything. Then we need to examine our automatic thoughts and know when you're thinking something, is this automatic? That's not, I don't automatically go that way anymore. And then we need to look at our self-image. Do you see yourself as prosperous? And if you haven't seen yourself as prosperous lately, you need a makeover, and that happens within. Then our imaging and imagining is very important. You need to see yourself as an open channel to the abundant flow of creative ideas that will lead you to meeting your needs. And then we need to be happy for others. When we see someone else extremely wealthy, a lottery winner, we need to be as happy for them as if that had happened to us. Because our happiness for them will create a sense of awareness for us that will enlighten us, and then we'll be more attractive to the good that we deserve and the ideas that create that good. And then we need to bless our bills. When you send in a bill, a long time ago, the people used to put the stamp on a letter upside down. That meant I love you on a love letter. I don't know if you knew about that. So you might want to put your stamps upside down on all your bills to say, I love paying this bill. I love having the resources. I love the light and the television it provided for me, and now I'm paying for it. I love paying for my bills. Also, when you pay your bills, when I pay my bill, and I have a bill for $15.36, I always make the check for $16. It's faster on my checkbook arithmetic. And they can have those few extra cents because they're going to charge me more, or they're going to charge me the next month, and that's just already on my bill. And on only a few occasions have I had to call somebody about a problem or a bill that was late or something that got lost. And I always have the joy of saying, can you see my account in front of you? Oh yes, we can see it. Do you see that you owe me some money? Yeah, we owe you 66 cents. Well, don't you always owe me? And then, so are you worried that I'm going to not, that I didn't pay this payment, or it got lost or whatever? So it's all you, and I pay that extra because I can afford it. I'm abundant. It's not like I have to watch every penny and make it to the penny. I can afford to be gracious and generous. So I always say, overpay your bills. And then also look for money on the ground. I found a penny this morning already practicing what I preach. It's right here. Found it right on the ground, right out there. You'd be amazed at where there's money laying around. And when you find it, you don't just go, oh, there's a penny. Ah, look, more abundance. I'm a penny richer. I'm already a nickel or a quarter richer. You know, this stuff works.